Traveling alone always has a mysterious allure, a pull toward the unknown, where each turn in the road could lead to adventure, self-discovery, or sometimes haunting experiences that linger long after you've returned home. There's something both liberating and unsettling about pulling off the highway late at night, seeking refuge in unfamiliar places, isolated motels, and forgotten inns where every creak of the floorboards or flicker of lights stirs up secrets that have long remained unresolved. For many, these roadside stops are merely brief, unremarkable points on the way to somewhere else. But for some, a night at an off-the-map motel becomes an unforgettable experience, steeped in mystery and fear that follows them for years. These travelers encounter things they can't explain, strange voices in empty rooms, the heavy footsteps of unseen guests, or even shadows shifting in ways that defy all logic. Some choose to tell their stories, while others let them fade into the background, dismissing them as mere nightmares. In the stories that follow, we will delve into four tales that go beyond eerie atmospheres and uneasy feelings. These are true stories told by real travelers who stumbled upon something chilling, things they couldn't rationalize or forget, no matter how hard they tried. As you read, remember, sometimes the darkest experiences aren't found in haunted houses or ghost towns, but in the quiet, anonymous motels off lonely highways, where the walls hold more secrets than you might want to uncover. Story 1. The Ghost in the Motel Room. In 2016, during a trip from Chicago to New York, I decided to stop for the night at a small motel called Ohio Valley Inn, located on the outskirts of Columbus. It was an early autumn night, chilly and damp, with a sky void of stars, casting an eerie ambience over everything. As I drove into the parking lot, I noticed how the motel looked quite run down and deserted. Only a few cars were scattered around, and the surrounding dense, dark trees seemed to encase the entire area in a cocoon of isolation. I hesitated for a moment, but eventually decided to get out of the car and head into the reception. Upon entering, the stale, musty air mixed with an odd, unpleasant smell, as though the place had been untouched for a long time. A middle-aged man with a cold expression sat behind the front desk, not looking up when I approached. I greeted him and mentioned that I needed a room for the night. Without saying a word, he handed me a room key and motioned towards the end of the hallway. Following his directions, I walked down the dim corridor, illuminated only by faint, flickering bulbs. Upon reaching my room, I had to force the key to turn in the lock. The door seemed stiff, as though it hadn't been opened in ages. The door creaked open, sending a chill down my spine. Inside, the musty odor was even stronger. A single bed sat in the middle of the room, an old TV on a small table. The faded blue curtains draped over the window, casting an ominous atmosphere. I closed the door, locked it, and tried to settle in, though an unsettling feeling lingered in my mind. Sitting on the bed, I tried turning on the TV, but it only showed static, flickering on a grayish screen with distorted channels. Resigned, I turned it off, lay down, pulled up the blanket, and attempted to sleep. Just as I was about to drift off, a faint tapping sound came from outside the window. Tap, tap, it repeated, like someone scraping something on the gravel outside. Pulling the curtain aside, I looked out but saw only darkness. Convincing myself it was just the wind, I closed the curtain and reassured myself that it was only my imagination. But as soon as I lay back down, a louder sound echoed, like someone pounding on the door. My heart raced, and I sat up, glancing around the room in fear. The pounding grew louder, reverberating through the night like a knock from another world. I approached the door, straining to listen for any sounds. A whispering voice came from outside, cold and unnerving. "Help me, please. Open the door. I need help." Holding my breath, I stepped back. The voice continued, pleading and faint but frightening. I tried to ignore it, but it lingered, each word hanging in the air like a grim plea from the beyond. After about 30 minutes, the voice fell silent. Just as I was beginning to calm down, I heard faint footsteps inside the room. Even though the door was locked, A cold chill crawled up my spine as I sensed the footsteps drawing nearer. Frozen in fear, I couldn't move. The room light suddenly flickered, dimmed, and then went out entirely. And in that darkness, I saw a tall shadow standing at the foot of the bed, staring at me. The face was obscured by shadows, but I could make out two faintly glowing eyes. "You shouldn't be here. This is our place," the voice whispered, like murmurs from another world. I screamed in terror, jumping up and racing to the door. Despite the door sticking, I used every ounce of strength to pull it open, then bolted down the hallway without looking back. I ran to my car, leaving the room key on the seat, and sped away from the motel without stopping. That entire night, I drove in a state of panic, not daring to rest until dawn. Later, I heard that the Ohio Valley had been the site of a gruesome murder many years ago. People said that the victim's spirits still lingered there, waiting for someone to free them from an eternal nightmare. Story 2. The Mysterious Guest. In 2018, during a charity trip with my father to a rural, flood-stricken area in the southern United States, we decided to spend a night at a small motel called Blue Lake Motel. The motel was near a wide lake, but the water had long dried up, leaving a barren, desolate area. The surrounding wilderness only added to the eerie atmosphere of the place. We arrived close to midnight. The motel looked modest, with a row of old rooms dimly lit by flickering hallway lights, adding a haunting silence to the already chilly night. Inside the reception area, we met an elderly couple who ran the place. The woman smiled kindly but looked weary, while the man stood silently in the corner. His dark-rimmed eyes and solemn expression sent an inexplicable chill down my spine. After checking in, my father and I decided to leave our charity items in the room to distribute to local families the next morning. But as we were arranging things, we found a bag of children's clothes under the car, which hadn't been there before. We were both certain we hadn't seen it before, leaving us perplexed. My father decided to bring the bag to the front desk, hoping the manager could help distribute it to nearby families with children. When we placed the bag on the counter, the old manager suddenly backed away, shaking his head in refusal. No, that can't be here," he stammered. My father asked him why, but the old man didn't explain. He simply looked at the bag with a horrified expression and then retreated into the back room, leaving us bewildered. That night, we returned to our room, the uneasy feeling from the front desk still lingering in our minds. I tried to fall asleep, but I was awakened by my father's loud snoring. I remember it was exactly 2:17 a.m. The night was silent, and the air so still that I could hear the rustling leaves outside the window. But soon, a strange blue light began shining through the crack beneath the door, sending a chill through me. The light flickered, shifting between bright and dim, like someone was standing outside, shining a flashlight through the gap. I frozen, listening intently and holding my breath. Then I heard a faint whisper, a quiet, sinister murmur, as if multiple people were speaking, but I couldn't understand a single word. The voices seemed to come from just outside the door, sometimes loud, sometimes soft, and entirely unintelligible. In that terrifying moment, I froze. My hands were shaking, and I felt a weight pressing on my chest. I mustered the courage to nudge my father awake, and he sleepily opened his eyes, trying to grasp what was happening. I whispered to him about the strange light and whispers outside the door, but he just chuckled softly, thinking I was overreacting. He put a finger to his lips, signaling me to stay quiet, and we listened intently. For a second, everything fell silent. Not a sound could be heard. I exhaled in relief. But then, right beside the bed, we heard faint scratching noises, as if someone or something was clawing at the bed frame. We held our breaths, feeling each scratch reverberate through us. Something beyond this world seemed to be lurking in our room. My father said nothing more, only motioned for me to stay silent. Outside, the blue light still glimmered. It felt as if hundreds of eyes were watching, waiting for the smallest movement from us. After what felt like an eternity, the light outside slowly dimmed and then vanished completely. Only then did we dare to get out of bed and quietly gather our belongings, deciding to leave immediately. We moved as silently as possible, leaving the room key on the bed, and quickly drove away from the Blue Lake Motel. The following morning, at a small cafe along the way, I searched for information about the motel. Old news articles appeared on my screen. Blue Lake Motel had been the site of numerous mysterious disappearances over the years. The missing included children who had vanished without a trace and were never found. At that moment, I realized that the blue light might have been the restless souls of those who had vanished there, seeking some form of release. That charity trip not only left me with a lesson in compassion, but also a chilling reminder of the thin line between life and death, between our world and the lost souls. Story 3: The Empty Room's Hidden Secret. In 2020, my ex-girlfriend and I decided to take a trip to the Appalachian Mountains to relax and explore the rugged landscape. Our relationship was strained at the time, filled with constant arguments that left us both exhausted. On the second night, after a heated argument at the hotel, I decided to find a separate place to sleep, hoping that a little distance would help us both cool off. I drove down a lonely road and eventually stopped at a rundown place called Mountain View Motel. It looked cheap, with peeling paint and dusty windows, but at $50 a night, I figured it would suffice. As I walked down the dimly lit hallway to my room, I noticed that the door to the room next to mine was slightly ajar, with a faint blue glow emanating from a TV inside. No one was visible inside, though, and I told myself the occupant must have stepped out temporarily. Once in my room, a cramped space with a faded carpet and musty air. Ilayon tabit, too restless to sleep. I passed the time on my phone, playing games while the faint light from the hallway seeped through the door crack, merging with the surrounding silence. Soon, I heard strange sounds from the room next door, faint groans mixed with muffled noises. I furrowed my brow, sensing something odd, but not quite sure what was happening. After a few minutes of silence, there was a loud bang against the wall separating our rooms. Startled, I sat up, listening intently as another bang followed, louder and more urgent, like someone trying to get my attention. Despite feeling uneasy, I decided to investigate. I left my room and cautiously approached the door to the adjacent room, which was still ajar, the eerie blue glow spilling into the hallway. "Is anyone in there?" I called softly, pushing the door open wider. No response. The room was eerily silent, and the TV displayed only a blue screen. As I turned to leave, my eyes caught a small note stuck to the screen. The message, scrawled in a shaky hand: "Read. Check under the bed." I felt a chill run down my spine, but curiosity got the better of me. I knelt down and peered into the darkness beneath the bed, where I saw a pair of eyes staring back at me. Horrified, I stumbled backward, my heart racing as I struggled to process what I'd just seen. In that moment of terror, I realized I had somehow backed out of the room into the dark hallway without even knowing it. I didn't remember how I had moved, only that I needed to get away from there immediately. I dashed back to my room, slammed the door shut, and locked it, slumping against the wall to calm myself. My heart was still pounding, and the image of those eyes haunted me. I quickly called my ex, recounting the entire experience in a voice that shook with fear. As I was explaining, the pounding started again, this time louder and coming from the empty room next door. She heard it over the phone and urged me to head to the front desk immediately. I didn't hesitate. I ran to the reception, demanding that the staff check the room beside mine. The receptionist gave me an odd look before responding slowly. "No one is staying in that room. That room is vacant tonight." A shiver ran through me. I insisted he accompany me back to check. When we entered, the blue screen had gone dark, and the room was steeped in shadows, with no trace of the eyes I'd seen under the bed. Even the note on the screen had vanished. I immediately requested a refund and left the motel. Back at the hotel with my ex, I could only hold her tightly, feeling relieved to be safe. That night, I couldn't sleep, haunted by the memory of the eyes under the bed. Story 4: The Fateful Night at the Country Inn. A few years ago, during a business trip to a remote rural area. I stopped for the night at a secluded roadside inn called Rusty Creek Inn. It was late, the road was empty, and the night was dark as I arrived, utterly exhausted, needing only a place to rest before continuing my journey the next morning. The inn was old and dim, and I walked down a narrow hallway to reach my room. Inside, the air felt cold and oppressive. A single bed, an ancient TV, and a large mirror hung on the wall across from the bed. After freshening up, ilayon tabi, trying to sleep, but only a few minutes later, a faint giggling sound echoed down the hall, making me sit up in alarm. It sounded like a child's laughter, but in the stillness of the night, it was chilling. I looked around the room, but everything was still. I tried to brush it off as exhaustion playing tricks on me, but the laughter returned, this time closer, as if standing right outside the door. Overcome with dread, I got up and peeked through the door. The hallway was empty, shrouded in darkness and silence. Just as I was about to close the door, it suddenly swung shut, as if someone had gently pushed it. I turned quickly, but no one was there. Yet the feeling that I wasn't alone clung to me, making it impossible to sleep. I stayed awake the rest of the night, and as soon as dawn broke, I left the inn without looking back. From then on, I vowed never to stay in such a secluded place again. The echoes of that eerie laughter still linger as an unforgettable reminder of that fateful night. The haunting tales of these motels not only evoke fear, but also serve as a reminder of the importance of choosing safe places to rest during travels. The mysterious guests, the strange noises in the night, and the lingering spirits of deserted inns remain, awaiting any travelers who might unwittingly wander into their world.